I would like to go ahead and call our Tuesday, September 24th, our regular council meeting to order. And it's 7:00 p.m. Thank you. We've already had a moment of silent meditation and pledge of allegiance. Madam Clerk, may I please have roll call?
Roll call, Mayor Cubillos.
Here.
Vice Mayor Nickerson.
Here.
Councilperson Mathis.
Present.
Councilperson Roman.
Here.
Councilperson Irvin.
Present.
Also present for the record, Janice Jacoby, Village Clerk, Christy Alou, Village Manager, Norman Powell, Interim Village Attorney.
Great, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move approval.
Motion's been made by Councilperson Mathis. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilperson Roman. All in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, our September 24th agenda does pass this evening. With that said, may I have a motion to approve the minutes from the July 23rd regular council meeting?
I'll motion.
Motion's been made by Councilperson Roman. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilperson Mathis. Any discussion? Or can I get roll call? All in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing that, our minutes for the July 23rd regular council meeting does pass. We're going to go right into F1. This evening we're going to be presenting a proclamation to Mystic Foundation. It's our I want to say it's our third or fourth year that we have presented a proclamation. There are so many cancers that impact many of us, and the three that we continually in the last several years have presented a proclamation has always been on September, which is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and October for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and then November we have Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month. With that said, I'm going to go to the podium, and I would like to please ask Sylvia to join me at the podium as we present the proclamation, and then, of course, we will take a photo with you. So if you can all indulge us for 1 minute, and I will read the proclamation on the record. Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas September has been designated National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month to honor those children whose lives have been lost and those irrevocably impacted by this terrible illness, and to strengthen the nation's resolve to search for a cure. And whereas cancer is the leading cause of death by disease among U.S. children between infancy and 15 years of age. And whereas childhood cancers across all racial, ethnic, geographic, and socioeconomic background. And each year, tens of thousands of children face the battle of cancer with incredible bravery and inspiring hope. And whereas while progress against some childhood cancers has been made, cure rates for many forms of childhood cancer remains less than 50%. With the incidence of childhood cancers increasing at a more rapid rate than any other age group, and whereas this disease not only affects the child diagnosed with cancer, but also their entire support network of devoted parents, grandparents, loved ones, and friends. And whereas the Village of El Portal recognizes the devastating impact that this disease has on members of our community and the importance of increased research on childhood cancer. And whereas this month we recognize that these burdens are shared by countless dedicated healthcare professionals, organizations, charities, and parent advocacy groups, which support patients and families by offering advice, encouragement, hope, and financial assistance, and work tirelessly to lift the spirits of these children suffering from cancer. So therefore we, the mayor and commission of the Village of El Portal, do hereby proclaim September 2019 Childhood Cancer Awareness Month and pay tribute to the families, friends, professionals, and communities who lend their strength to children fighting pediatric cancer. I'm going to ask the council, I'm going to sign it with you at the podium, and I also want to thank our police department, who I believe attended your event a week or so ago. You can join me at the podium. I'll sign it. You guys come up. Hello, hello. And even though it's a little warm in this, I wore this for your color because I know it's gold. Okay, here, let me sign this. It's one of my only yellows. And we have a frame up there, okay? We'll let you say something. Let's take a quick picture. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Council, everyone that's here. As the mayor said, childhood cancer is the #1 disease killer of children in our country. The incidence of childhood cancer continues to climb at an alarming rate. Yet government funding for childhood cancer remains less than 4%. And it is only through the raising of awareness that we'll ever see a world without childhood cancer. And we're happy that things are changing. Unfortunately, some of our cancers do remain terminal upon diagnosis, but we're hopeful that that will one day change. If you know anything about Congress, you know it's very difficult to even get a bill into the House or the Senate. And I'm happy to report that we have had 3 major bills passed and signed into law by the President recently. One is the most comprehensive childhood cancer bill ever introduced into Congress, and it is only because of all the awareness that has been raised recently, and I'm so thankful that you are a part of that. So thank you all.
And Sylvia does not mention it, she's very modest, but she lost her son, Sal, many, many years ago, and it's been her fight ever since, so.
Everything I do is because of him. He's my inspiration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you for being here, and I thank the council for supporting the cause as well with us. My bag on the podium, that's my bag. At this time, good and welfare. If anybody would like to come up, limited to 3 minutes. We have a lengthy agenda this evening. Would like to come up and state your name and address for the record. Okay. Hearing none, we are going to go right into H1. This evening we have a presentation by Javier Bentecourt. He is the Executive Director of the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust, also known as CITT. Many residents may have heard that acronym before. CITT is the monies that we receive annually, quarterly, with regards to, it's based on, and he'll elaborate a little bit more, and that these are monies that we can use to do repairs on the road or bus stops, bus stations, and more like bus stops. So with that said, I welcome you and thank you for being here.
I think you covered it all. I think I'm done. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, council members. Javier Betancourt again with the CITT. Thank you for having me here today. We're making the rounds with all the municipalities to provide the communities that pay for that half-penny sales tax with an update on what's happened with that half-penny and the progress of the People's Transportation Plan. Here with me today, your very own Mayor Emeritus and a proud CITT trust member for many years, Dr. Lightfoot Ward. Yes. Keeps us on our toes and represents this village and this community very well. You should be very happy to have her as your representative. Also with me today is Nestor Toledo. Nestor is the municipal liaison and works with all of our municipalities and has a great working relationship with Manager Alu, who's been fantastic to work with. Nestor, say hi. Okay. Moving on, next. So, quick overview of the Transportation Trust. Again, in 2002, the voters in Miami-Dade County were kind enough to increase their sales tax from 6.5% to 7%. That extra half penny was to go towards implementing what they call the People's Transportation Plan, which is a very long list of transportation projects that were promised to the community, much more than just transit, which seems to be the part that people remember. As part of that referendum, the voters also created a Citizens Independent Transportation Trust to provide oversight over those dollars to make sure they were spent appropriately. That is the office that I am with. But the CITT actually isn't me or Nestor or our office. It's the members of the trust, all volunteers working on your behalf to make sure that the dollars are spent well. And here you have all the members. Next. And again, your area in particular, represented by Dr. Ward. Next. We are guided by a number of documents, just like you are. You know, we have 2 ordinances, we have state statute or bylaws, et cetera. And then the projects themselves can all be found in what we call the 5-year plan. All the projects that have been completed, all the projects yet to be done are included in that document and can be found online at www.miamidade.gov/CITT. We believe very strongly in being transparent, so all of our information, more than you could ever want, is available online. Next. One of the key functions that we perform are the audits, right? And I know that's not everyone's favorite word, but it's how we provide that financial oversight. We provide funds to the municipalities in advance. You don't have to come to us for pre-approval. However, we come back on the back end and make sure that those dollars were spent appropriately. I'm happy to say that the village has done a very good job under the current leadership of complying with the regulations, and I know that you're in the middle of an audit now, and we certainly are optimistic that you'll come through it very well. And if not, you know, mistakes are made. Sometimes, you know, the guidelines aren't very clear. There are some gray areas. We always work with the municipalities to make sure that we resolve any issues. Next. So, since 2002, we have collected over $3 billion in surtax revenues. So a lot of money has been collected. 66% of that has gone to Miami-Dade Transit, both for operations and maintenance and capital expansion and debt service. A little over 20% has gone to the municipalities per the agreement. It was required at 20%, but since we had new municipalities join the county, that number has actually increased and may continue to increase as new communities are formed. Only 8% of those dollars have gone to public works at the county for roadway improvements. So there's some talk in the community sometimes that it's all been blown on roadway projects and no transit. That's not true. By and large, the money has gone to transit. But a lot of the roadway projects have been completed. And so people see that and believe that all the money has been spent there. They've just done a good job spending their small percentage. And then less than 1% goes to our office for administration. Next. This is the same information essentially on an annual basis for you to review. Next. So what were those promises? Again, people tend to remember the major expansion of rail throughout the county, right? And that obviously was a very important and core promise of the PTP. However, we also promised to expand bus service by a significant percentage. We promised again to give 20% to the municipalities. We had a series of roadway projects that were included in the plan, 42 projects in all. We also promised fare-free transit for all seniors, what is now called the Golden Passport, fare-free Metro Mover, and then a series of smaller, what they call neighborhood improvement program type of projects. Those are traffic signals, resurfacing roadways, et cetera. Next. And we've made some progress. Number one, the fare-free for Metro Mover and seniors went into effect immediately and has been wildly popular. We did expand Metro Rail to the airport, so that is the one corridor that was accomplished, and obviously we need to do more. We have replaced or are replacing all the vehicles in the transit system. The Metro Mover cars were all replaced. The Metro Rail cars are nearly all replaced. They've now surpassed the 50% mark, which was important. Anyone who rides Metro Rail can tell you those old cars needed to go. The cities, of course, have done an amazing job with their 20%. We have 27 trolley systems operating, serving 29 cities throughout the county. We are replacing the buses with eco-friendly CNG and electric buses. And as I said earlier, most of the roadway projects have been completed, and we have also are developing what we call advanced traffic management system. Those are smart signals that will help make our roadways more efficient and save you time. Next. Here's just a quick snapshot of those municipal systems. Again, they're scattered throughout the county. They've been very popular, and I think at this point we're exceeding 14 million riders between all of those systems combined. Obviously, the top 3 to 5 largest municipalities are carrying the bulk of those riders, those being Miami, Miami Beach, Doral, but even in the smaller municipalities, such as yourself, it's important to have those circulator services because many people who don't have other choices depend on those. Next. And actually, if we go back 1 second, it's not necessarily shown here, but last year we amended our code to allow for on-demand service. It used to be you could only use surtax dollars for fixed route trolleys. Now you could use it for on-demand. And you've seen certain municipalities reach out to vendors such as Freebie. Those are those kind of glorified golf carts that you're starting to see pop up in certain cities. So that is something this city could explore as well, or this village, I should say. On-demand is something that is a small percentage of the system currently, but is growing at a rapid rate. Next. So those are the things, I'm sorry, back one, I think we had one. There we go. So again, roadway projects, 75% of them have been completed. The other quarter are essentially in some state of development. And so we're going to see those come to fruition pretty soon. Next. So those are the fulfilled promises. But to be honest, not all the promises have been fulfilled, namely bus enhancements, right? So if you look at that yellow bar there, that is the number of service miles that were in place when the referendum was approved. They started making progress in increasing bus service. Then with the recession and some other issues, they started coming back down. And today, if you look at that pink bar, we're essentially at the same place we were when we started. So $3 billion later, 17 years later, we really haven't delivered on this promise of enhancing bus service throughout the county. Next. Next. Okay, so this, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to just keep saying next here like 6 times. So there's the original Metro Rail. The promise was all those corridors throughout the county. And the result today, as you can see, just that one extension to the airport. So clearly another unfulfilled promise. This is where a lot of the focus and attention is in the community today. People want that rapid transit. It's essential to moving people in the county. And we're obviously big proponents of that. Next. The good news is that although those are unfulfilled promises, we're working very closely with the county, with the TPO, with all the different agencies to fulfill that unfulfilled promise. And we're doing that through something called the SMART Plan. Next. If you look at the SMART Plan, and I believe they've probably been to you before and presented on this, it's very similar to the original promises. It's essentially the same lines with a rebranded look and name. Next. So just a quick overview again. Those corridors are out to the beach, east-west, essentially along 836, out to Kendall, north along 27th Avenue, northeast near this village, and south to Florida City. Adding to that is a web of what they call Bus Express Rapid Transit Systems. These are essentially like the I-95 Express that currently operates on I-95. They want to replicate that along all the major highways throughout the county. So in implementing the SMART Plan, we will fulfill the promises of the PTP. And all of these are in different states of being either studied, planned, or executed. Actually, the South Dade Corridor is the first one out of the gate, is going to be constructed in the coming year or two. Next. Next, we'll skip that. So again, the priorities at this point are the South Dade corridor that was selected for bus rapid transit, which is essentially like a train on rubber tires. Everything about it operates like a train. The other priority that was selected by the county was the North Corridor along 27th Avenue. FDOT is managing that study, and they're actually about to come before the TPO, I think in October, to select the technology for that corridor. They know it's going to be elevated guideway of some sort. It's not going to be BRT. The question is whether it's going to be Metro Rail, maglev, light rail, or monorail. I think FDOT is recommending, well, I know FDOT is recommending heavy rail. The TPO will make the final decision on that in a couple of months. Next. So all of this is very expensive. The half penny can't pay for it all, nor was it ever expected to pay for it all. It was always anticipated we would get state and federal grants, but even counting on that isn't enough. And so we've developed what we call a funding lasagna, right? We need layers upon layers upon layers of funding sources to make this a reality. You have the half penny, just click like 3 or 4 times, yeah. We have the half penny. The TPOs found about $1 billion that they've put into the pro forma. The county went ahead and actually approved a value capture district along every corridor in the SMART plan. It's a TIF district in which, as property values rise in those districts, the increased value is going to go back into funding the system. So that's generating an additional $2 billion. And then there are other sources of funding that we're looking at as well. Next. Finally, some additional areas of focus. You know, we know that ridership throughout the system has been declining in large part. We believe one of the ways to address that is to, you know, really provide first, last mile solutions that connect people from where they are to that transit, right? You know, you could build all the corridors you want. If people can't get to it or they can't get from it to where they want to go, they're not going to use it. That means bicycle pedestrian infrastructure. That means on-demand service. That means circulators. We also believe that all of those different systems need to be better connected. You know, we're currently operating like 30 different systems between Metro Rail, Metro Dade, Tri-Rail, and all the municipalities. You have all these different systems, and the consumer's confused as to, you know, which one to use to get from point A to point B. So we're working with the county and all the municipalities to better integrate those systems. Maintenance and cleanliness comes up at our meetings all the time. Dr. Ward can attest to this. Not acceptable, right? The levels of maintenance and cleanliness need to be enhanced, and our trust has taken it upon themselves to really hold the department's feet to the fire on this. And finally, community outreach. We need to do a better job of communicating to the public and to officials such as yourselves what's happening with the PTP, where has that half penny gone, and also to solicit feedback and input from the community. So that's why I'm here today. We're doing hundreds of these throughout the county between the municipalities and business groups and associations. So if there's someone that you think I should present to in the community, please let me know. I'd be happy to do so. With that, I'm available for questions. Thank you. Dr. Ward, would you like to add anything? Yeah.
Dr. Lightfoot Ward, thank you for having Javier, Madam Manager. Thank you so much. He's making his rounds, and we've got, what, 3 or 4 people in, 4 villages in this area that's already pending. I'm glad we got ours finished at this point. What is always a concern that I hear a lot, and I'm sure you all do also, is that we don't have a circular. We have circulars running around us, but we don't connect to a circular because we don't have one. So I'm asking publicly that we work on doing that collective, what do we call that? Where it's not us running it alone, we are tied into a system of circulars so that we are an aging population. As Councilman Urban said, we're talking about livability in here. We're an aging population. We have some young people coming in, thank goodness. But basically, we are a stable community of aging people. I was 40 when I joined this place. I'm 66 now. And I'm going to look for a circular in my village. I'm going to look for a circular that can get me to Publix because I don't plan to drive very long. I'm going to want that circular. I try walking from the main line. We call this Main Street. 87th is Main Street. You know how long it takes for me to get on the other side of town? Too long. You know how hot it is? Too hot. So I'm asking council to make that one of your agendas. We need a circular, not independent of everybody else, but one that is part of the circular system. And if folks don't want to play, well, you still have the CITT to hold the feet to the fire and say, listen, sounds like discrimination to me. Yes, I'm using that term because that's how it's used in the community. We need to work together. Not only does it help us monetarily if we do it collectively, but it also helps the residents. Besides, I don't know about you all, I don't live in Miami Shores, but I shop in Miami Shores. My bank is in Miami Shores. Dunkin' Donuts is in Miami Shores. So is Starbucks. Publix is in Miami Shores. The Dollar Tree, that's questionable, but I think it's in Miami Shores too. And I also go to the country club. Why? We don't have it. They also had a friendly mayor. They had a friendly mayor during the time I was mayor. And I told them to stop calling El Portal their ghetto. And they stopped. It was very derogatory, and it was done for years and years. I like being in Miami, in El Portal, and being able to shop locally. So if I enjoy that, I'm sure I'm not the only one. Can we please work on, with the other villages in the area, on bringing a collective trolley servicing a circular, I don't care what it is, a circular serving El Portal. We are an aging community. Thank you, Javier. I appreciate you getting this appointment done, and I'm making the rounds with him. And so wherever he goes in this, I'm making the same presentation to the other cities to let them know that there is another way to spend the half-penny tax, that the villagers, we're all villagers. If you didn't know this, we are all villagers in this little area. We'll all be able to benefit. Thank you so much. Can you imagine I did that without notes?
Yeah, I want to add a couple of comments. And thank you for your presentation. I definitely think you need to come more regularly and keep us informed. A couple of things. First and foremost, we have and we are working on a circular and a feeder that has, you have just so eloquently pointed out, if the county, it takes a very long time for the county to get anything done. You can only imagine a small village with limited resources. So it's taken us a while. We have met several times with Aline Bouclet. So that is a conversation. It is in the works. I have reached out to Miami Shores, not just on this, but on many different avenues to collaborate and share resources. They're not so inclined to do so. I'm hoping with the leadership that they have today, that may change a little bit. But I have gone to them with regards to the closure of the streets and how it's impacted our roads. I've gone to them to share services for the aquatic for our residents. I've gone to them to collaborate with us so that we can either maybe share the dispatcher for the police department. I went to them for the trolley. So I ask, and I'm pretty vocal. They're not as receptive, again, as I would like them to be. But again, they do have new leadership that has only been there a few months. So I'm hoping that is a new era for a better collaboration among the three villages, not just El Portal and Miami Shores. I think it'd be better served if we do the three of us together. I go to the county and I question how it's okay for Miami Shores to have less miles per hour, like a reduced speed limit, and they didn't grant it for El Portal. That doesn't make sense because our streets abut. So you're going to drive really slow in Miami Shores, and then you're going to speed through El Portal to the next road. So I think that we ask. I think it would be most helpful if there were more voices asking. But we've gone to the county. We've done the traffic studies. We've spent the money with regards to helping us either their speed bumps or village-wide reduce the speed limit, especially after Miami Shores did it. So I agree with you. It's not fair that village got it and we didn't. But it doesn't mean we're going to stop asking. We have to continue to ask. I also want to just today I had a conversation with a resident on 87th Street about the roads. And CITT money that we receive from you all, I just want to clarify something, is for us to repair the roads. It's us to do, as I said, a bus stop or what have you. But the village of El Portal residents need to remember something. 2 years ago, we made a commitment that our CITT money was going to be held as collateral for the septic to sewer project on the west side. So when residents call and ask me, you know, you're not doing anything, Jason used to do a lot as far as street repairs, I tell them, you are right. But for 2 years, our CITT money, the council, I didn't agree with it, but the council voted on that we would use our CITT monies that we receive as collateral to pay back the loan for the septic to sewer in phase 1. I just want to reiterate that because I think residents forget that, and it's an important note to remember that. So that's second point. So I definitely want to let Dr. Ward and everybody know that the trolley is something we have been working on, we are working on, but as I told the resident today, and I will tell all of you, nothing happens overnight in any of our lives for that matter, and definitely not in government. I respect the process and I respect procedures because that really keeps processes clean. But with that said, it's taken us time to get either the feeder and the circular that we have been working on with Eileen Bouclet. This message, the last message I want to point out is that is to the council. I'm the president of the Miami-Dade County League of Cities. I sent out an email to the clerk to send to the council because I have the opportunity to appoint members of this council on boards. One of them is the board that you're mentioning. I know that our current member that was appointed by Mayor Suarez, which is Eli Stiers, is still there. I believe his term may be expiring. I have to take a look at that at the league, but I just reiterate to the council that these emails go out, and it really is something that they need to recognize, that when residents perhaps don't understand the value of the Miami-Dade County League of Cities, being the president and us going there, the value is that I have the opportunity to appoint members to many, many boards in Miami-Dade County. What does that mean for El Portal? It means that we have a voice at the table with county issues that will impact us, such as this. So this message is more for my council. So when you see those emails from the clerk, I encourage you to take a look at it, because you have an opportunity to serve on a board that is going to be of the best interest for our community. And that's just one of the values that the league brings. I just wanted, that was a side note to my council. But this is incredibly important. I didn't see a connection to the Hard Rock or anything, if that's in the works or that's even a
Which Hard Rock? The stadium or
yeah,
the
Miami Gardens?
Yeah, so that's along 27th Avenue. That's the North Corridor.
Okay.
So one of the stations is going to be at the stadium.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think that concludes my questions. I'll ask the council if they have any questions to Mr. Betancourt.
I have one question. This, just as the discussion and because of who you have access to, essentially, my question is, have any of the express lanes so far solved any of the congestion issues on the freeways?
I don't think it's ever going to solve any of the congestion issues on the freeways. We're
So-
always going to have congestion. I think
Right.
what this provides is an alternative. So if you don't want to sit in that congestion, you're able to choose a different.
So I've been driving in Miami
road.
for 17 years. Almost 10 of those years I was actually on the road for my job, right? I've driven across this continent several times. I find our toll system in the express lanes to be late 80s technology designed for a municipality that is monolingual. So please, whoever it is that you speak to, anywhere within interstate, major throughway planning, 826, 836, 95, right? It's going to be on deaf ears, it's fine, but I have to ask anyway. Please let them know that their express lane idea is not going to solve anything. And if the result is simply that a company gets to say, well, don't worry about the taxpayers building an extension through the Everglades, right? We have the money in our coffers to pay for it ourselves. It's not a selling point for more express lanes. So there needs to be some imagination, some creativity, specifically as it pertains to signage. There's a movement on this planet towards pictography, for example. It's called wayfinding, in terms of non-lingual signage, right? So because of the transient nature of the county, residents also transient, right? So because people frequently don't know where they're going, don't know where they're coming from, don't know where they're going to, they find themselves confused, baffled, and then you add these devices on top of it. and now you have a real problem. So I would just humbly ask that you put a voice in for
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not in our wheelhouse, but we'll pass
Yeah.
it along. It's
Right,
FDOT,
right.
the Turnpike, and MDX.
So I got to take the opportunity. All right, thank you.
Councilperson Urban, don't forget, you've been appointed to a committee on transportation. Okay.
I'd be remiss, by the way, if I didn't tell you that Mr. Steers has been an excellent member of the
Yes,
trust.
yes,
so,
absolutely.
Certainly looking for him to be replaced, but he's been a great member.
Please don't tell me he's being replaced. We don't have that. No, he's not being replaced. Definitely don't say that. But when his term is up, that would be
Sure.
something that needs to happen. Yeah, okay. Any other questions for Mr. Betancourt? Does any member of the audience have a question for Mr. Betancourt? You can go to the other podium. I'll close the council. Hearing none. All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And,
My pleasure.
And,
Thank you for having
and Dr.
me.
Ward, thank you for, of course, serving and representing us as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Happy to
And
come
Nestor,
back
thank you for
anytime.
being here.
Okay. Thank you.
Good job. Okay, so we are going to go right into our resolutions and ordinances for this evening. The first one up, we have Resolution 2019-09. This has passed the Planning and Zoning Committee. We asked for some modifications. I'm going to ask Juan to please come up. And I believe that the staff report is attached. Was not attached is the visuals as far as what changes were made based on what we asked. And I think if you all remember, we asked them to close the top door so that they wouldn't have access to the roof, things like that. So I believe Juan is going to put it up in these nice TVs that he donated to us. Small TVs. Well, you know, it's relatively speaking. Small TV, small village, we're all good.
Microphone and everything.
While Juan's going through that, just for the record, we'll have you present, and then we'll have the applicant, if they're here, present. I believe the attorney is here. Mr. Fernandez, nice to see you. And then after, with the council feels like all of our concerns from the planning and zoning meeting were answered, then we'll read the resolution into the record.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. Juan Mullerat, Plus Urbia Design. This application is a site plan approval for an addition and conversion of an existing structure from residential use to a commercial establishment, which pursuant of Section 17-43 of the Code of Ordinances requires approval by Village Council after a public hearing. This is the second reading. Per the first reading, the council had certain comments that the applicant since made those modifications to the application, and I will show them to you in the screen. The changes that the council required on first reading were improvements along the sidewalk, removing the roof terrace access from the second floor, showing the location of garbage disposal bins and concealing them from the public view with landscape on the alley, drainage improvements, and a proper bike rack. Those were the 5 recommendations for changes from first reading. If you give me a minute, I'll show them to you. So your package shows 5 pages, which is our recommendation. It has all the information there. You also have had a chance in the first reading to review the whole package. So I'll just go directly to the changes that the applicant did. You have seen the application survey, and as you can see here in the site plan, the first thing that you'll notice is the trash bins with a landscape around being fed by the alley, which is one of the requests from the council. You'll also see, I believe that is best shown No, it's the order. Well, you can see it here. Let me zoom in. Well, let me zoom out. As you can see here, they've added a proper bike rack on this in this area, and they've improved on their drainage. And then finally, the last request by the council was the access of the terrace from the second floor, and you will see in. I was going to show the plan. Is that okay? It's loading slowly. My apologies. That's the first floor, and this should be it. I'm on the village Wi-Fi, so. Oh, here we go. So as you can see here, from the second floor, 2 offices, the door has been removed since the first reading application, and there's no access from the second floor onto the terrace. So those were the 5 conditions that the council requested. Based on those conditions and those changes made since the first reading, planning recommends approval for this application.
Is there I'm looking at the exterior view here, but is there one with the back view where it shows that the window was closed, or the door, the sliding door or opening?
Was the second image on the screen, the second color image? Mayor, if I may approach?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, we didn't get these, but that's okay. You guys want it? It was open before. Do you guys want to see it? Or you can see it fine? And I don't recall if this got answered. I believe someone asked about the material. Oh, well, not that no one's going to be on the deck, right?
No one's going to be on the deck.
Is there any? If I can, I hear the class, the applicant speaking. If you can come to the podium, so that if anybody up here has a question, you do it from the podium and not from the audience, please. Is there any questions to either our staff or the applicant, who is also here as well? If you can state your name and address for the record.
My name is Scott Winkle. I'm the architect. Did I mention my address and all of that? Or?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. It's just Andrew.
400 Kings Point Drive, Sunny Isles Beach.
Okay. Does the council have any questions, again, for either Juan or the applicant? Based on remember this past planning and zoning, there was changes that we asked them to make. The changes are here before us. So any questions on the changes that were made? Councilperson Mathis.
I wasn't at the first reading. With regards to the parking, how many spaces are there?
So currently, there's 5 spaces in a diagonal layout, and the applicant is going to improve that part of the right-of-way that remains the villages into 10 parking spaces. If you don't mind to fill you in, since you weren't at the first reading, there's a deficit of parking in the site. They have septic in the back, so they can't park within their parcel. There's also a very large tree that I believe everybody appreciates. And so part of this application was a variation to the application based on the fact that they cannot fit their parking off-site. That is the reason why they're improving El Portal's right-of-way in order to be able to park on the site. Our recommendation as part of a condition to the application and to the approval is that as soon as we turn from septic to sewer and the drain field is no longer necessary, the applicant will park on their site, and these parking spaces will remain as a improved part of the right-of-way of El Portals.
And I want to apologize. I want to apologize. I know that you or the property owner, after some of the comments that I made, and some of us made at the first planning and zoning, did reach out to meet with me. And I apologize that I did not have the opportunity to do that. Somebody did. I don't know if it was Ben or yeah. And I want to apologize about that. That I didn't have the opportunity. But I've spoken in great length with Juan and the manager with regards to. I think you were here when I just spoke about impact, and everything that we do impacts our village. And the goal is to make it a positive impact, because win-wins are the best situations for the applicant, for the village, for the administration, for our residents at the end of the day in our community. My only thing is that I probably would, bless you, I probably was not entirely, I don't want to say thrilled with the extension, because I'm really familiar with the property, and the property is beautiful. And I hope the trees that are back there do not get removed, because I would think that they're not going to get, they're not scheduled to get removed in any way, correct?
Absolutely
Okay.
not.
One of the things that that we did was we did an analysis on all the streets, so we can have a better idea of what the cost is as it relates to the damages that all our streets have. So when I take a look at that, and I believe when I spoke to Juan, you know, this is a small project. And I know you're the architect and the attorney, but something to consider. I think a conversation that needs to be had. I think most of us are happy with it, and I think it's going to be a nice addition to Northeast 2nd Avenue. And I'm sure Kidstown Pediatrics welcomes other businesses besides herself and State Farm. But at some point we need to take a look at what the impact is going to be to the village. That is our right-of-way, the parking, and what type of conversation, if they've had at all, with regards to the cost of parking, the cost of the streets, and what, when I initially spoke to Juan and the manager right after a meeting, I had said, now that we have an analysis of all of our streets, maybe there's a cost share that we could take a look at where the applicant and the resident, the applicant and the village can go into some type of an agreement. But that might be a little too much to ask based on the size of the project. And then, but we take a look at the parking, and the parking, there's a cost to parking. And I'm sure that our residents are not going to be happy. Those that park there right now, they're not going to be available because, hey, you know, I know the applicant when she was here at P&Z said, oh, it's going to be small, it's going to be quaint, but it's business. And businesses want to grow, and businesses are going to promote, and businesses are going to market, and hey, that's fantastic. So there is going to be traffic flow with yoga, and the studio looks. What's the capacity of the studio? How many people does it hold? Or is it?
It's about 20.
Department's capacity and the real capacity.
I'm sorry.
Well, there's like a fire department legal capacity, which might be like 40 people, but
Yeah.
it'll probably be used by about 20 people.
Yeah, well, fire will give you the capacity for it, and you don't have that yet, right? You don't.
No, we have fire approval.
And
They
what's
assume these maximum, you know.
and what's the fire capacity? Like here's 75.
40, I believe.
40.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's not including the building. You're just talking about the addition.
It's the total capacity.
2,300 feet.
The total capacity is for 40 people,
20.
or just say 140.
It's only 2,300 feet. It's about the size of a small.
The rooms upstairs only have one.
And I know, but can you repeat the amount on the speaker?
I think it's below 50 people.
Below 50 people.
Yeah.
Do we have a copy of that fire
No, we
approval
don't.
that states
I
that?
don't think you submitted the fire, the response from the fire department.
We have our approvals.
Okay. That typically is part of
Just curious.
the building application, not the zoning application.
I
But
just,
we
I
need
just
that
want to know if,
approval.
if he has that number, if we could actually see it, because, 40, 50, 70, that, hey, listen, we had a State of the Village here, and Miami Shores got upset when we were parking on their swales. Horace Mann has events, residents get upset when they park on the swales. So, I mean, this is going to impact the residents in the area, and we need to know what that capacity is, if you guys have that. I mean, I think you do have it, right?
Well, what we have is the square footage. It's a 2,300 square feet of commercial space, 2,340 to be exact, and 830 square feet of office space. So that's essentially the size of a 2 or 3 bedroom house, the 2,300 foot component, and then with an additional 800 square feet of office space. But we anticipate that this is going to be sort of a mixed use environment where not all of the space will be occupied at one time. You'll have classes that take up a lot of space. The yoga classes, it's not like a culinary school or something where you have a large audience and people sitting down. People are actually going to be exercising and following an instructor. And then there's going to be art classes and holistic events. So they're not the kind of uses that, pack the house, so to speak.
But with all due respect, we have a resident, or had, I think they moved to California, on the corner of 87th Street and Northeast 3rd Avenue. They had those holistic events, and they took up the entire parking of the sanctuary.
Yeah.
So the holistic events draw a big crowd.
Well,
My whole point is, I'm not against the project, and I'd like to, with the council, say, my whole thing is that there's going to be an impact. And there's going to be an impact on cars, and we already have a situation where we're dealing that in Horace Mann when they have their family events. We have that here when we have applicants come to rent out this hall, and there's no parking, so they park across the street. So that's a problem, and the capacity here is 75. We got a lot of cars for 75, which is pretty close to 50. People Uber, people don't Uber. That's still 50 cars potentially.
Well, Madam Mayor, I got to tell you, I think that you have a potential issue with adaptive reuse along 2nd Avenue, and that's the most logical first step towards activating 2nd Avenue, is allowing existing structures to be utilized for commercial purposes, which is what happens first, and then you find development that follows that, which is the real development that provides its own parking. But there's this interim phase where you are going to have parking issues. There's no question. It's part of growth. You see it in many major corridors. The city of Miami experiences it. Juan knows this better than I do. Coral Way, 8th Street, they all experience this, and then they go to the next stage of development. In the interim, all you can do is protect with, parking decals required for certain times. It's a difficult situation, but it is something that is going to create an impact. We recognize that, and we're adding spaces through this application.
I was going to say, it's not necessarily existing spaces.
Right.
You're adding, you're
We're
expanding.
We're doubling the number of spaces
Absolutely.
on the street,
Absolutely.
and we would like the ability to be able to utilize those, and pay for those in some way during certain hours.
So my point is, and again, I go back, I had a brief conversation, and again, I'm going to open it up to the council. I had that conversation with Juan and the manager, I believe, right before our P&Z meeting, with regards to, did this conversation happen? Because there's a price of doing business, and we want the business, we welcome the business, but we've also been doing this for a while where we know impact to the residents. And in a year from now, when you all are doing fantastic and we want every business to thrive, we want you to be successful, because if you're successful, we're successful, but I can't be successful at the expense of the residents in your block that are going to see the impact themselves. And we didn't have a conversation, or at least a dialogue on how we can mitigate that in some way. And I think that needs to be had, and if it hasn't, it needs to be. And with that, I open it up to the council for any other comments on this particular issue. Councilperson Mathis.
I actually had the same conversation with Juan earlier today with regards to the parking area and some kind of compensation. It's actually the one area that I've always stated that we should have meters. So I think it's something that we really need to look into as far as maintaining our roadways and so forth. So I think it is a discussion that we do need to have with some kind of partnership, like the mayor said, or something.
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor?
Councilperson Roman. Mhm.
Okay. I too, I went to Placervia and had a meeting with them in their offices a few weeks ago. And I too discussed that concern. I also discussed it with the applicant. And I'm just wondering, you know, we discussed several options. I'm wondering if this is the time for us to discuss that, or how do we move forward in terms of figuring out how do we protect some of those spaces for our residents, especially in the evenings, I think during the day. But, you know, I agree that we should, the applicant should pay and rent out those spaces from the village for their use. And so when will that conversation take place, and where do we, you know, how does that happen?
Sorry. Please.
Go ahead.
I assume part of the answer will be by the attorney. Now is the time to put any conditions to this application if the council so feels that they should. I will mention that the fire code. So the fire code for, I just pulled it up, a classroom requires, it calculates 20 feet per person. At 2,300 square feet, that's basically is 115 people. I assume that they applied as retail. Retail is 60 foot per person, and that's about 38 people. Yet, I'll tell you that that's a little bit of an unfair assumption, because you don't necessarily have to have 40 people, and that doesn't necessarily have to happen. In fact, parking will be potentially a condition of how many people you're going to have in that studio. And because you only have 10, some of that parking overflow is going to have to be controlled in some way. I totally agree with the applicant that there are, and we have discussed this, I believe, with most of you, that there are some growing pains in creating this main street, and the retrofit of existing buildings is always complicated because they are tight spaces, and it is an evolution of this Second Avenue. If we don't, as a village, encourage, and if as a village we don't try to live with these growing pains, then we will never have what Dr. Ward was talking about, which is, you know, why are we always shopping in Miami Shores? So I believe that this is a good application. I believe that it does follow the vision that the residents had for the charrette. Is it a perfect solution? No, but it is an interim solution as this main street evolves. And I think that the residents, as they drew that map, that charrette, I think they understood that, you know, some residents were going to live next to a parking lot, and that there was going to be commercial on Second Avenue, and commercial brings activity, and there's going to be noise. And that's, again, part of the vision that the village had in 2003. So, again, I think there is an issue of control. And to answer your question, Councilperson Roman, now is the time to put those controls in place and approve or deny, or approve with conditions as you see fit.
Mayor, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I do believe that this is, we should come up with some conditions in terms of the parking tonight, and add that to the application. When I spoke with Placervia and with the applicant, we talked about, you know, perhaps a monthly rental for the spaces. We don't have staffing in terms of you know, if we had meters, they have to be enforced. What does that look like? Does it look like, you know, we partner with, right now I think in Miami we have like 3 different agencies that are out there for meters for parking, and this, you know, what does that look like for us, you know, in terms of the village and the revenues that it would bring into the village?
So I'm going to answer Councilperson Roman's question because I think it's necessary, because I don't think it entirely got answered. But this needs, and I'm going to apologize to the applicant because it's not necessarily the applicant's fault. It's nobody's fault, really, but there's a process and procedure. And one of the comments that I have spoken with to Placerbia is that it is unfair to the council that they receive things like this at the last minute, because we are elected to make educated decisions, and we can only make it educated when we're informed. So to answer your question, this should have been handled a long time ago when the application was first put in, by advising the mayor, the chair of planning and zoning, bringing the attorney involved, and maybe having some conversation on what the impact was going to look like. Now, if it was just the existing building, then this conversation probably wouldn't be necessary, because fire usually goes to schools and predicts, what the capacity is, but kids. Preschool don't drive. Most kids don't drive, and we're looking at a building where people are going to drive to go there. And again, that's fine, but there has to be a better solution to it. And the better solution, and it didn't happen here, but to answer Council Roman's question, is that when was this application submitted?
Well, Madam Mayor, if I may, we did reach out to your planner, and we also met with Councilman Urbam and Councilman Roman. We could not meet with you, unfortunately.
No. Ben Fernandez, I'm going to interrupt you. You met with them after the planning and zoning.
No, right. But what I'd like to say is that there's an inherent disconnect between your planner and what the council is discussing now. Condition number 3 of the approval specifically says that all parking shall remain available to the public at all times. So the reason that the conversation did not evolve with respect to what it should cost the applicant to utilize that parking exclusively is because they are not recommending that in their recommendation, which is something that I was going to bring up in my comments, that we cannot live with condition number 3, and we hope that you agree that there should be a cost for utilizing some of the spaces.
Ben Fernandez, you are working with the village on another matter with us, and we've been working together.
Absolutely.
And we've been working on that a long time before it even comes to the council,
Right.
and before the project even comes to as a thought
Right.
to the residents. So I say that to say that if I would have seen this, as a mayor, I would have said, okay, we need to have a conversation about this, because this is not just converting a garage into a room. This is doubling the size of a property on Northeast 2nd Avenue. This is going to impact residents because of parking. Like, this conversation would have happened. That's what I'm saying. I'm not pointing fingers, but what I'm trying to say to answer the question is we can't do this again because it's unfair to the applicant. They've done their due diligence, but there needs to be a connection, whether it's Placerbia, whether it's administration, that when there's a project, the council needs to be aware of it, not a week before the planning and zoning meeting. When you've received a viable application in the front desk and there's plans in place, at least the chair of planning and zoning needs to see it. And then if I would have seen it as the mayor and as chair of planning and zoning and doing this for a while, I would have said, okay, we need to sit down and have a conversation with the attorneys, because what is this really? Because that's exactly what I said to the manager and to the planner. It's exact. This is what I'm saying today is exactly what I said to them in the room right here, right before the planning and zoning meeting, when this was just really brought to us like a few days before. Again, but you know what? And it's not because I'm mad. As you both have eloquently stated, this is new for all of us. So processes are new, hence why I've recommended a training. So I know Placerbia is going to be bringing in a training to the staff, because we need to collectively work better together, because this is not going to be the only project. So to answer your question, this could be done way in advance if there's better collaboration even amongst ourselves. And you're right, maybe he made the recommendation. And again, what I'm about to say is not to offend anyone, but we have staff, but we're elected because we live here. We're elected because we're invested in the community. We're elected because we pay taxes, and so we may look at it with a different eye and give that perspective with a different eye. That's, I believe, our job. So My recommendation, and I don't even think Norman has even been brought to the conversation, is that if the council, which I think most of us like the project and we want to see it successful, but we also don't want to be in this seat a year from now and have residents sitting here complaining about parking, and guess what? We never had the conversation. So we're having it now, so it's okay. So I really think that there needs to be conditions. I'm not entirely comfortable passing this project unless we see what those conditions look like, because the council's gonna, it's not just my opinion, they have to obviously feel equally as comfortable with it. And again, it has to be a win-win. It's gotta be a win for the residents, then it's gotta be a win for the business.
Madam Mayor, may I? So Ben's right, the condition number 3 keeps the parking public. What you're bringing to the table is a management issue of the parking spaces that remain public. It really shouldn't have much to do with the application other than the fact that the applicant is improving those spaces. So if the council feels that this is a good project that should be approved, we can still approve this project and work on the management later, because those remain public spaces. One doesn't trump the other. Planning and zoning has nothing to do with the management of parking spaces or public right-of-way. So what planning and zoning does is to make sure that the spaces are correct, that they're laid out in a way that is safe and, you know, and it's appropriate and by code, and that the applicant meets all the requirements for building and zoning, for planning and zoning that are set in the code. Again, my understanding, and maybe the attorney wants to weigh in if there is something that I'm not saying correctly, but what we are bringing to the table is a good solution from a planning and zoning perspective. What you are bringing to the table, which I totally understand, it's very important to the village, and we have discussed it at length, and I've explained some, in fact, not just with you, but with some of the members of the council, is a management element that, as you said, it's new. And there's a lot of gray areas right now until we actually narrow it down, write it down, and make a resolution or an ordinance about how to manage public spaces in the right of way. And that might not just be in this street, but it could be in other streets as projects come along.
Madam Mayor.
I understand that, and I'm okay with that. The only thing is that we still need to address the overflow and how there needs to be a situation that needs to be addressed somehow, like what is going to be the best way to handle that, because yeah, the parking is going to be public, but that means that it can be taken by, you know, their yoga students, and that's fine too, but the thing is that there are residents who are used to that being available, so there just needs to be a better put together on all of this.
Yes, I wanted to state too about the parking and it being a management concern. You know, Dr. Okonkwo was here. The village is responsible for maintaining her parking spots. We would have to be responsible for maintaining these. I understand that you're, you know, improving it with 10, but once that's done, when potholes develop or something happens here, that's another expense for the village to undertake for the maintenance of that. Those right-of-ways. So those are things we have to consider on our side as well. So I think the conditions are really important in this instance, as we didn't lay that out in the pediatrics office case before.
Did you want to say something? Or a council person? I don't know. So somebody lean forward.
I had a question with regards to, because it's the second reading, and I really don't want to hold anything up. What's the nuts and bolts of their requests excluding the parking? Can we still move forward on this and then come back and have some kind of covenant with regards to the parking, or do we have to do that all at one time?
My recommendation would be that you would have to do everything together. And the reason why that is because as the applicant has suggested that they're willing to pay for, as consideration for the parking spaces. What's going on here is that there's a limited number of on-street parking. And the applicant, in order to have the commercial use that it envisions, is going to require pretty much exclusive use, I mean, let's call it what it is, pretty much exclusive use of those spaces during hours of operation. The way the application and the resolution reads is that while they're going to be operating, our residents are still going to have a right to use those spaces, presumably during their hours of operation. So to the extent that there's a parking agreement that's worked out with the applicant, either for exclusive use of those spaces during their hours of operation to the exclusion of the residents, I think the council would have to see what those terms are, just like we're trying to struggle with what may happen if there's a full house for a particular event, and that agreement would govern who would be entitled to those spaces. So the parking is an integral part of the application, so to just say that we're going to pass this aspect of it without a firm understanding of what the parking agreement is going to look like and read like and deal with whatever occasions come up, I think that's absolutely not the way to view the application. So unfortunately, to the extent that that's lingering, my professional opinion would be simply to just give the applicant an opportunity to present a parking plan, a parking agreement for staff's consideration and the village's consideration. We work through that, whatever those figures are, and then present that back to the council with the overall application.
Well, Madam Mayor,
Thank you, Norm. Yes, Ben.
if I may, that's what we've been wanting to do, honestly, but perhaps if the council would instruct staff to work with us on that sort of an agreement, we're happy to do it. But I think that staff's position, and it's not an unusual one, I fully respect Juan's position, is that, you know, these are public spaces and they need to remain public. But the flip side of that is that my client is adding 5 spaces to the total number of spaces on the street. After hours, after 7 p.m. or 9 p.m., these will become available to the residents. So, and there is no residential use of the property any longer. So those spaces that were being used by the people that were living on this property are now, you know, there are 5 more, there are 10 available to the neighborhood, so to speak, at night. I realize that's only part of the time, but it has to be taken into account that that's part of the formula. But we're happy to have the dialogue. We would just like to be able to speak to Juan on amending that condition number 3, because I think we need to understand it. And I understand your position that that's an operational issue for the city, citywide, but my client needs to understand what it's going to cost her as well in this particular instance before she moves forward.
I don't think that we should get into a discussion.
Let's be clear one thing. This is village property that we're talking about. So it's up here.
Right.
That this has to happen. And Councilman, I'm more than willing to come up with something and of course with the manager involved and Norman to try to come up with some kind of.
I would like to go ahead, and unless the council has anything else to say, we could talk about this forever. I ask, please, Norman and Ben, just exactly like we were doing for the Cavista, like nothing new.
That's fine.
Let's get together and let's come up with something that is amenable to everybody involved, and that the council can have something to read and go on.
And my client would have been here tonight, Marcella, but she was out of town. She's flying in today, so it'd be good.
That's why she's got you, Ben, and she's got the architect. We understand that. If the council's okay with that, we're just, you know, go have the conversation. I'll have no problem having a special council meeting if we need to, if there's a sense of urgency to develop. I know it's the holidays, but we need to do things the right way from the beginning, to sort of set the tone.
If I could just, I do want to point out that that integrated into these plans was so the sidewalk is essentially being shifted to accommodate deeper parking spaces.
We're providing an easement,
right,
15-foot wide easement,
yes,
at no cost to the city to make those spaces work.
And I think that's
I don't want to argue our position here.
But I do want to point that out that certainly the applicant has broken a sweat trying to meet us in the middle on just about everything. I had myself. My concern is that the spaces are perpendicular as opposed to 45-degree angle, because then a vehicle has to back entirely, right? So really, truthfully, in this application, my humble request is that you adjust it from 10 spaces to 9 and divide those extra inches between those 9 spaces just to create just a little bit wider space so cars could turn tighter, doors could open wider. people with strollers, older people with two-door sports cars with 7-foot doors, right? And so that would really be my humble request. I do want to point out that it seems that the applicant has truly broken a sweat trying to meet us halfway on all of these issues.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the council? Councilperson Romo.
Okay. And I just want to be clear so that we all know how this is moving forward, because, so is this something that the applicant is going to talk to our manager and?
No, as I mentioned, the attorneys need, it's going to be an agreement, and we're working through one, and we have been for several months with the Cavisa.
Okay.
So Norman, Ben, the manager, and Juan, and as chair of public P&Z, they'll put me in copy. They need to start working on an agreement with regards to what that's going to look like, and that agreement will come towards.
In the interest of the applicants breaking a sweat, I'm going to use your words. Would the council consider approving this conditional to that agreement? And that way that they don't have to present the whole project again, and it's just conditional to that agreement?
The attorney just advised otherwise.
Okay.
I'm only one vote, though.
I think it's just form over substance. I mean, we still have to come back to discuss it with the overall project, so
Then
I think it'd be better for the council and also the community to come back with one application with the proposed parking agreement that we'll sort through. I
then
think the applicant doesn't have a problem with that.
That's
then
fine.
I would kindly request that if there are any other design criteria that needs to be mentioned to me or to the applicant, so that we could work on those things in addition to be done now. Otherwise, we, from a planning standpoint, we assume that everything else. I'm just looking.
Yeah. No,
after
the only thing that I just thought of also is events. When the sanctuary had originally put in their variance, one of the things that we asked them was if there was over X amount of individuals attending the event, that they must hire El Portal off-duty police officers. I think that that's something that needs to be potentially also added. That will help the flow of traffic, parking, and all that as well when it comes to the events. Okay.
I do have one more question. Do we currently have, Madam Manager might be able to answer this better than everybody, but do we currently have any parking spaces in El Portal that have a value assigned to them?
No, we don't.
Okay, so this is my roadblock in terms of holding up this process based on this, because I wouldn't see it as the fault of the applicant that we have not signed a value to any parking space, not one single parking space anywhere in El Portal, so that any value that we'd be discussing in terms of what is the value of the 5 additional spaces or the 10 in total is entirely an arbitrary conversation, because there is no metric to.
Not a true statement. We don't have one because we haven't had the circumstances, but this is going to set the standard for Northeast Second Corridor. And in a situation like this, we'd use the MPO, which is the city of Miami.
Okay.
That's always our default.
And that's exactly
MPA,
what we
sorry.
use with regards to the discussion that we had to put meters at that spot.
And more importantly, if we don't do this the correct way, remember, this is only going to be the beginning of Northeast Second Avenue, so we must set the precedent, and not favoritism or the council is selecting. It's got to be standard across the board that all the businesses that are coming in, this is the avenue that we're going to go.
Right, and then I don't know if humor would be appreciated right now, but I have no intention whatsoever of ever running for mayor. However, I might consider it on no parking meters ever in El Portal as a platform. That might get me out there, but I'll just say very strongly, I cannot put it anywhere clearly.
I haven't mentioned meters, so I don't. Oh, okay. I don't think meters have been mentioned.
But it'll come up in the third minute of the
Okay.
discussion about parking in El Portal.
So, anyway, with that said, thank you for allowing us to have this conversation. Juan, thank you for everything, and we look forward to hearing from you all. It's in you all's hands. As soon as you guys get it together, it comes back to us. Okay? Thank you. We're going to move right over to Resolution 2019-10, which is Soul Smart permit fees. If I can have the attorney please read it into the record. Actually, before I do that, I do have a question for the clerk. if they wanted to get this in the October agenda, was this advertised?
Yeah,
And what's
it
the time
was-
frame that you need to be, for it to be
has
advertised?
It has to be 10 days, but then I have to also count with the publishing. That's what I just told
Oh, okay,
the
okay.
attorney.
Oh, okay.
That they have to give me within enough time to advertise
Okay,
that.
so as long as you got that, Norman, and if we can make it, if not, then maybe November, okay?
Yeah, I'm gonna give
I
them
just
a
wanted
date.
to put that out there so that they knew, okay. With that said, can we have Resolution 2019-10, Soul Smart permit fees read into the record?
Resolution 2019-10, a resolution of the Village Council of El Portal, Florida, waiving permit fees for the installation of photovoltaic systems, providing for findings, providing for conditions, providing for appeal, providing for violation of conditions, providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you. If I can have a motion to approve Resolution 2019-10?
Motion to approve.
Motion's been made by Councilperson Roman. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilperson Mathis. Does the council have any questions on this, or does the manager want to elaborate on this?
Yes, we're very happy to have our Soul Smart designation and to provide the permitting necessary to get our residents green or energy efficient by waiving permitting fees for 12 months so that they can outfit their homes with Soul Smart paneling and energy efficient measures that this will come with. So we're excited about this project.
Sorry, the only thing that I will add is that I'm a little sad that this waiver didn't come up before the first reading, because we might have been able to go for silver instead of bronze. This is, this waiver is actually pretty great as part of the program.
But we did it at the planning and zoning.
But by then we had already applied for Soul Smart.
Got it. Okay, well, hey,
Maybe we can amend it in the future and get, a nicer metal.
Okay. All right, I agree. I'll open it up for any public comments with the 2019-10. Scott, Rod, Anna, no, hearing none? Okay, please name and address for the record. We're talking about just this resolution.
I got it.
Okay.
This place. Scott Russell, 199 Northwest 90th. My only comment is on the parking. If it's public, we do need handicap, ADA accessible. That's my only comment.
Yep.
You get to that point.
Okay.
Oh, it's not, that's,
Okay.
we moved on. No.
You're good.
No, you're not.
That's an excellent comment. Any other 2019-10 Soul Smart? Okay, hearing none. If there's no discussion from the council, can I get roll call?
Roll call. Councilperson Urban.
Yes.
Councilperson Roman.
Yes.
Councilperson Mathis.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nickerson.
Yes.
Mayor Cubillos.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, there is an ordinance, first reading, correct? Yes. It's a code amendment for walls, fences, and hedges standards in Zone 3. If I can please have the attorney read this to the record, and then we'll have Juan give us, actually, no, Juan, why don't you give us a little bit back, before you read it, let's talk a little bit about fences. Because we had a town hall, there was a survey. I know Councilperson Mathis is a little passionate about this. So let's talk fences. It's all yours, Juan.
So we got into this because of the request of residents trying to apply for fences, mainly because of privacy issues. The current code doesn't allow for fences, especially on a second frontage in a corner lot, taller than 4 feet, which doesn't provide much privacy. We also got into this because residents were requesting fences of materials that were not approved. As you know, it's only allowed stone and I believe it's a small 4-foot wall on the front. And it was coral rock, and I mean I can look it up, but it was very narrow. So what we've done is we have expanded on it after a lot of public input. And we have included composite materials, PVC, aluminum cast iron, vinyl coated chain link. Up to 4 feet on the secondary frontage beyond the first layer by right and not as a variance on rear yards and of corner homes. We have also included some language for the maintenance of hedges, and also required that the structural side, which is very standard, the structural side of the fence be on the owner's lot. That's really in a nutshell. I can go in more detail if you want me to. I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Alrighty, I'm going to open it up to the council with fences. I'm just going to say, you know, good fences make good neighbors. So if the council has anything for Juan.
I spoke to Juan earlier today. I didn't yell.
Much? Sorry.
Not that bad. We discussed the request, was it request number 3? The wordage kind of threw me off with regards to it. It should specifically state that it's for corner lots. I don't believe that we want fencing in the front yard. That's just my take on it, my opinion on it. But the wording in that section should be a little more clear.
Is that number 3 request?
Yes.
Okay.
That should only pertain to corner lots.
Sorry, so in number 3, where would you add that language? Because that's also going to have an impact on the actual resolution.
The entirety is it says amend regulation for location and height of fences. And then it goes on to say walls, fences, hedges, standards, in order to allow additional materials. Why do we need to address the locations with regards to additional materials? If we're talking about going forward and having some type of fencing in the secondary front setback, that should only pertain to corner lots, because they're the ones that need the privacy because they're on a corner.
Right.
The vestibule point is where a fence should stop, as opposed to corner lots, in my view, and that's the way the code reads.
And again, Mr. Attorney, if you'd like to correct me if I'm wrong, so you're looking at the staff report, which I grant you it's a little confusing. The attorney and Camila have done a good job in correcting that into Exhibit A, which is what would go into the code. If you look at Section B, it begins with corner, side yard, walls, fences, and hedges shall be permitted with a maximum height of 4 feet within layers 2 and 3 of the secondary front setbacks. Sorry, when you called me, I wasn't looking at this document, but I just realized, so my apologies for not bringing that up to your attention earlier. The Exhibit A, can you find Exhibit A? Yeah. After the resolution, there's Exhibit A in red. It talks about the corner side yard, so it does.
But why are we specifying that it's with regards to the height and location for additional materials?
We're just amending the existing language that we have. So whatever is crossed out is what we're taking out of the code. So we're taking out, for instance, in Section A, instead of reading front yard and side yard, it will just be front yard. And in Section B, it's a new section because we're removing side yard in Section A. We're adding a section in Section B that talks about specifically corner side yards. So we are trying to clean up the code to make it clearer. I believe the way that you're requesting.
Yeah, but the location and height has nothing to do with the material. The material is the material. We're allowing specific materials. It doesn't matter the location or the height. It's just the material.
That there's no language about the location and height in the actual Exhibit A in red resolution that I can
It
see.
says amend regulation for location and height of fences.
Right, you're looking at the staff report. I'm pointing out Exhibit A, which is actually the resolution. I believe we correct our confusion in the staff report into the actual resolution, which is the important part is Exhibit A, which is what will go into legislation. The staff report is just information to guide this resolution.
What's your consideration for the side yard? At what point are we talking about?
So
along the property line, what is the secondary front setback and what is the side yard?
They're both the same. The secondary frontage.
So is that up to the vestibule?
I'm sorry, up to the vestibule.
Front point of the front point
to the property line, yes. What we are saying here, Councilman, if maybe I wasn't clear enough. What we're trying to do here is to allow for a fence up to 4 feet instead of with a variance by right on the side yard of a corner lot. So if your house is looking...
Right, I'm fine with the corner lot. I'm talking about my neighbor.
Okay.
They're allowed to put up a 4-foot fence as well?
No, because they don't have a secondary frontage. I'm sorry, are they a corner lot?
No.
Then they don't have a secondary frontage.
So the secondary frontage is
corners only.
Okay, that's what I was at.
Yes,
I didn't know.
Sorry. Yeah, and you're probably remembering our phone conversation,
Right.
which makes it more confusing. So yes.
Okay. So all of this only pertains to
corner
lots.
lots. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
This first section in terms of location.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm cool with that.
Now, the changes go beyond that, as you can see, with regards to materials, et cetera. Also, in terms of the landscape along the side and interior side of property lines for hedges and landscaping. There's several other amendments that are provided herein.
8 feet?
That's what was indicated as preferable by residents.
How are we doing? Anybody else has a question to Juan? Councilperson Roman saying no. Vice Mayor Nickerson. Councilperson Urban. No. Okay, let's close it up and see if the public has any comments or questions for the our planner with regards to this possible ordinance on its first reading. If you have any questions about this fence ordinance, you can come up to the podium. There's 4 residents. Okay. No questions? All right, hearing none, I'm going to go up to back to the council with regards to, if there's no further discussion, may I have a motion for, remember, this is a first reading. This is an ordinance, so there will be a second reading. If I can have a motion to approve the first reading of this ordinance. Once the attorney reads it into the record.
Ordinance 2019-04, an ordinance of the Village of El Portal, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 24, Zoning and Land Development Code, Section 24-B.5G, Walls, Fences, and Hedges Standard Z3, providing for updated specific regulations, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for conflicts, repeal or severability, codification, and an effective date.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 2019-05 to amend, 04 for the walls, fences, and hedges in Zone 3?
A motion to approve.
Motion's been made by Councilperson Roman. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Urbam. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Madam Clerk, can I have roll call, please?
Roll call. Councilperson Urbam.
Yes.
Councilperson Roman.
Yes.
Councilperson Mathis.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nickerson.
Yes.
Mayor Cubillos.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Next, we have an amendment to the code for right-of-way vacation procedures. If I can have Juan, and then if necessary, the administration, give us a little background for the council and the residents.
Yes, so this should be pretty simple. The code currently doesn't have any provisions for right-of-way vacation, in part because there's no alleys that need to be vacated. This is a provision that is in many codes in order to vacate right-of-ways that are not in use anymore. The reason why we're including it now in the code is because there is one situation which, it's very rare in El Portal, where there's a right-of-way that was never paved, it was never used, and it's actually severing two properties in El Portal. And so what you're voting on today is the addition of this language into the code. It doesn't approve the right-of-way, any right-of-way vacation. This is just approving the ability to actually use that provision for whatever application for right-of-way vacation may come before you in the future.
Probably not related, but have we looked at, or I think we looked at the nature trail? Is that part of 87th Street? Is that?
I believe that's an easement. It's not a right-of-way.
It's an easement. Okay. Is there any questions for Juan from the council? Go ahead.
I just want to clarify two things. This envisions an application process, number one. And the second thing it does envision is that this application, if it's ever submitted to the village, will go to two committees. It will go to the Public Works Committee and also to the Planning and Zoning Committee. And we purposely built that into the language because the committees have different considerations, which would be a better review of the application.
Okay. Thank you for noting. Any other questions for Juan from the council? Okay, hearing none. I'm going to close the council real quick. Any questions from the audience to Juan before we read the ordinance into the record? Okay, hearing none from our four constituents. May I please have a motion to adopt ordinance 2019-15? Actually, no, I need Norman to please read it into the record. 2019-05.
Ordinance 2019-05 for right-of-way vacation procedures, an ordinance of the Village of El Portal, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 24, Zoning and Land Development Code, Article 6, other administrative provisions, providing for updated specific regulations, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for conflicts, repeal or severability, codification, and an effective date.
Thank you, Attorney Powell. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 2019-01?
I'll move approval.
Motion's been made by Councilperson Mathis. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Urbam. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Madam Clerk, may I have roll call?
Roll call. Councilperson Urbam.
Yes.
Councilperson Roman.
Yes.
Councilperson Mathis.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nickerson.
Yes.
Mayor Cubillos.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Thank you all for working through that. We're going to now work our way through the committee reports, which is the manager, mayor, and the attorney. A couple of things that I want to make note of for, oh, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
Before we're done with planning, may I just have a couple of things that I'd like to bring to your attention. We have been working on the architectural guidelines. We are pretty close to showing you something. We're hoping that you'll put us in the agenda for the next planning and zoning so that we can show you what we have and hopefully get comments back. We will have plenty of time to do that before any resolutions are put in front of you. But we really would appreciate, you know, some time within the next P&Z so that we can really get into it.
Well, okay.
You don't sound okay. You can reach out to me if you have any questions.
Well, okay. Okay. Yeah, you were in my notes, architecture pattern book. Alrighty, so I had a phone call from a resident today, and what made me most happy about the phone call, sometimes residents, they may like or love you or hate you, but generally they don't really call you when they have really good news. They usually want to tell you something that they're not happy about, and hey, they're completely entitled to that. That's why we are here. But you know, he called me because he read the newsletter and he had a lot of questions. So, and one of the things he said, it was really informative and he thought it was phenomenal. So I want to just really put on the record to the community, you take the time to read it, and if you have questions, call any of us up here, whoever wrote the article. A lot of time and energy goes into that, and one of the things that I did differently was I took the State of the Village speech that I did and I adopted it to more of a memo format, and I put that in the newsletter. So it's pretty informative to what we, the council, are working on, what the administration is working on. So there's a lot of little tidbits. I did want to highlight a few things that I felt incredibly important. First and foremost, I want to say that our backpack giveaway, we had 2, and both were not at a cost to the village at all. I think that's really important to note. I also want to commend Vice Mayor Nickerson and Councilperson Roman for reaching out and helping me distribute the newsletter. Thank you. I think there's still some streets to do, so if anybody else would like to help, let the clerk know, and we will have the newsletters here for you. I have CITT monies on here, which we discussed already, and that was one of the things that the resident asked me about streets. Because the roads are bad, we have been impacted negatively with Miami Shores closing their streets, and they're reducing their speed limit, so people are frustrated for a few seconds and then they come to us and then they speed. In time, there is an impact to our roads for that. And we will continue to fight, because I think it would make most sense if the Tri-Village, El Portal, Miami Shores, and Biscayne Park would model one another as it relates to speeding. It would make most sense. If we can do that. I also wanted to point out with our newsletter that Victor Riveron was Officer of the Year, selected by the administration and of course the Chief of Police. That was very exciting, and every time he sees me, he still talks about it. So I'm looking forward to doing more things like that. I think that we need to take the time to recognize police department and staff whenever anybody does a really good job. I think it's important to make that sort of part of our best practices, which leads me into best practices. Next conversation, I know right now the clerk, Councilperson Roman, Councilperson Urban, and the attorney are registered to go. I really encourage, I think I saw a late email from the chief. I really encourage you all to go. If you can, lend any police officers to go. There's a lot of good things that they can learn, and there's a camaraderie. A lot of departments go, and a lot of police officers go. I know we don't have that luxury because they're working and you don't have the flexibility, but if there is a flexibility, it would be nice if not only you, but some of them can attend as well. I want to thank everybody on the council. I want to thank the police department, and I really want to thank the community. I was really proud that as a small community, we really did a lot to make an impact for the Bahamas relief. We are so blessed that Dorian did not come our way. We did have to cancel meetings, but it's nothing compared to what they are going through, what they have gone through, and what they're going to continue to go through. And while we were there, I went with Officer Battaglia, I went with the manager, and we were able to have a long conversation with the fire department that was there, and they just thought it was amazing that we did 2 deliveries and of the village of our size. So really commend the residents, from fans to water to diapers to dog food, it's clothes, you name it. I thank each and every single one of you for that. that helped out, and that was a part of it. The architectural pattern book is something that I believe we in the planning zoning thought it was really important. It's important that we set the tone now with what's moving forward. As Anna Ward so eloquently addressed at the last meeting, people want to come and move here and they want to be a part of our community, but at the same time, there needs to be a standard or a guide that really indicates who we are, what we are, so that's never changed or never tarnished in any way through high rises or anything crazy like that. So that's important, so we look forward to seeing that. And then I do want to note, we mentioned it at the State of the Village, but it's now, I think, most confirmed that the Homestead Police Department will give 5 cars to use at the discretion of the administration and the police department, whether it's for you all to put a car or whether it's to code enforcement. I trust that you all will make the right judgment on that, as I believe the council will too. We're excited, and I think the manager will talk a little bit more about the easement with the septic to sewer. One of the reasons the resident called today was because when he read that, he's like, oh, you know, I thought the ball was dropped. And I said, no, you know, there's such a process with everything with government. And I think it's important that we repeat that so the message is clear to the community. We are interested in fixing the medians. We are interested in fixing the roads. We are interested in fixing all of these things that really impact us. But everything takes time and effort and money. And if it takes the county a really long time, it's going to take us even longer because we're small and we have limited resources. I want to thank the council. I know that was a bit of an exercise and tedious, and I felt bad for the applicant, but I do believe we're doing the right thing to set the bar from the beginning. You know, a clear example is Horace Mann. A clear example is the State of the Village. There's just no way to park anywhere. And if we can at least try to address it now, because some of us have real life experience with dealing irregularly here and on the west side, I think then we're doing our job the way we're supposed to. With that said, I think that concludes my report. I'm just going to reiterate to really please read the Peacock, because I think it lays out a lot of what we have done this past year, as well as what we're going to continue to do. I applaud Councilperson Roman and Councilperson Urban for responding to the email, and they are appointed on chairs that serves in the board that on the county. So I hope to hear from them down the road as they attend their meetings and if they have not received, I know you received information, but if you have not, please let us know. I look to hear you made some valid points today, and that's the place where you can really make an impact, and those impacts, although it's countywide, is also going to impact us, because we don't just drive through El Fertal, we drive through I-95 and Turnpike and all that good stuff. So with that said, that concludes my report, and I want to move on to Christia.
Thank you, Mayor. A lot of the things you mentioned are in my report as well. So I'm just going to touch on the things that weren't mentioned. As you all know, the sanctuary project is no longer a project for the village. They are selling the property, as you see the for sale signs out front, so that's going to change our planning in future, but we are moving forward with the Cavista at El Portal project, which is the annexed area. And we are working with the owners, and a development agreement has been set, and so we'll have some good plans, I believe, before the year is out, and we're excited about that project and bringing more residents to the village of El Portal. As far as the former trailer park development, the mayor and I will be meeting with the Full View Group, which is the owner of that property, and discussing some of their plans in the next day. Actually, we're meeting with them on Thursday, so that's exciting. We're seeing change, and it's coming quickly, so it is very exciting. And though we've lost out on the sanctuary project, hopefully that will, when that is sold, we'll see something good come from that property as well. We are very happy to say that our residents came through for us, as the mayor mentioned, for the Hurricane Dorian relief effort to the Bahamas. Our staff worked with residents and just taking collections, but also bringing in their things as well to help out. We did have the opportunity to go with the mayor, our code enforcement officer, Amir King, public works staffer, Jose Villela, and the Chief Magnuson, Lieutenant Mendez, and a lot of police officers, and I all went and and gave those donations over to the county to be sent over to the Bahamas through Commissioner Edmondson's office, the chair's office. So that was a great showing for our village, and we did 2 loads of things, so that was very exciting to see people just really come together in time of need. Our police department continues to make tremendous strides. We're knocking things off of that McGrath report recommendations and deficiencies list left and right, which is really exciting. We're also closing cases. I mean, it's amazing, and I don't want to take the sunshine away from our chief, because I want him to be able to report all this to you all in our public safety meeting, but we have some really good numbers. Things are happening quickly, and though it appears that crime is on the rise, it probably is. It's the 3rd quarter, but our staff is on it. Our police officers are doing a great job, and our chief is leading that department very well in closing cases and getting resolutions and assisting even the other jurisdictions. Like you said, Tri-Village, we are assisting and closing cases with the other municipalities as well as the county. And we're excited about getting these cars donated, because they couldn't come a moment too soon. We got some issues with our code enforcement car as well as our public works truck, but we keep going. We did have a successful comprehensive plan second meeting. And I say successful despite the fact that it was still a little low. The attendance was low, but it was such a viable conversation. It was so good, and people had so much to share, and we had to stop a couple of times and say, hey, it's over, like, we've run out of time, but it was a really good conversation, and I think that's going to be really helpful as Juan and his team put together our amendments for our comp plan. And I'm going to go through this really fast here. We are excited about finally getting to the point where we can pick that septic to sewer project back up on the west side. Through extensive meetings and it's been going on for a couple of years, well, probably longer than that, but a couple of years now with the mayor and the school board and just different people had some involvement, but we finally got a land use agreement in place, and we'll be going to the Miami-Dade County School Board on October 2nd to hopefully get that land use agreement passed through, and then we'll bring it back to council to review, and we can move forward finally to get that sewer project going again. And we're so close to completion anyway, so it will go quickly once we get the land use agreement in place. And then we'll move on to the next phase, which should be construction. So despite the fact that we've got a whole village to convert, at least we'll have that west side started, and I think that looks really good as we continue to go to Tallahassee requesting funds and assistance in getting funding for Northeast 2nd Avenue and the other parts of the village, which brings me to the 3 legislative asks that we are really promoting this season or this session. It is the septic to sewer conversion on Northeast 2nd Avenue, some stormwater improvements, of course. We see the flooding and just our needs, sea level rise, water projects, and we're also looking to do some kind of school safety or road safety project that would be roundabouts in the west side where Horseman School is. So that would be on Northwest 5th Avenue and Northwest 3rd Avenue. So we're really looking into these projects to assist in school safety, and that will tremendously impact the parking and the traffic and the speeding in that area. So we're excited about hopefully getting some funding for that. And we continue to do a myriad of things. We got through budget, thank you all, today, and audits a couple of months ago, and I mean, just so many things. And I just got the letter today that the auditors are ready to start up again. So we just got out of one, and now we're going back into it. But we continue to do our best for the village. Thank you.
I want to add something, a point of clarity for the residents. I want to add 2 points. The sanctuary is selling the property, but it had nothing to do with what we did. In fact, we did everything correct, and we did everything, and by we, I mean the El Portal Council and the administration. The Miami-Dade County Department of Health took 2 years to approve their permit. in their septic design permit because Northeast Second Avenue does not have sewer. By the time it took them to get the approval on July 22nd of this year, the investors, it's been 2 years have gone by, things have changed, lives have changed, some of them have moved, they've lost interest. Why do I say that? I just say this goes back to the importance of collaboration with the county and with Miami Shores, because my next point is going to be Miami Shores. So it had nothing to do with what the administration, when they called, they didn't want to do this. They were so enthusiastic, but again, it had nothing to do with us, but it was more that it took too long from the county. And then when the county did approve it, the impact fees were doubled, of which the El Portal gets nothing, the county gets that all. I want to go to the Rotunda real quick, because we are going to be going out there tomorrow. The initial one, when I met with Edmondson, that I thought would be the best was Northwest 91 and Northwest 2nd Avenue or Northwest 3rd Avenue. The reason I recommended 5th Avenue was because that's the county. Because if we would do the Rotunda on Northwest 91 and Northwest 2nd, or Northwest 91 and Northwest 3rd, because those are the areas that I mentioned to Edmondson, that's Miami Shores Road. So that's gonna have to be a collaborated effort to Miami Shores. So that really is, I want us to see it tomorrow. I didn't answer that, but would just be mindful that we're not going to be able to probably put that as an ask, which is why I selected Northwest 91 and 5th Avenue, because I was sitting with Edmondson when we were talking about it, and that's a county road. So there's Miami Shores, we would love if they would do it, but I don't think that they will. So that want to make a point of clarity on the Rotunda. I met with Chair Edmondson. That is correct. Yes, and. I met with Chair County Commissioner Edmondson when I first thought about the Rotunda. And one of the reasons that I brought it up was because I know when she was a mayor, she did the one right here. So when I presented when I had the idea to do it on the west side, number one, for traffic calming, number two, for safety for the kids, but it brands the entrance to who we are. That's why Northwest 5th Avenue is one of the reasons. Juan, to answer your question on the email. That's because that's the entrance for El Portal on the west side. Thank you. Yeah. I met with Chair Edmondson, Chair, our former mayor, County Commissioner Edmondson, Chair. Yes, that was back in March. I just wanted to make that point of clarity. So I'm going to move over to Norman Powell, the attorney.
I'll just keep mine brief. I mean, apart from the legislative items that we've worked on, and you all have touched on the two other items I'd highlight that's going to be coming forward in the future are the Cavista project. It was the first development agreement for the village, which we painstakingly went through with the owner and the developer. So that'll be coming, I guess, in the next few weeks. And also to finalize the long-awaited easement with the school board, which I believe we finalized on last Friday. So those are two milestones that is going to jumpstart some projects that have been lingering for some time now. So that's something we look forward to moving forward with in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Attorney Powell. There is no unfinished business. I don't see anything here. Does anybody have unfinished business? New business?
Just a reminder to the villagers that we are having our Shred-a-thon this Saturday from 10:30 to 1. So bring all your documents and so forth that needs to be shredded. They will shred them and they will give you a certificate of something of that sort. They'll be right here in front of the village hall, and yes.
It's 10:30 to 2:30. I have a question. So is it gonna be one shredder?
It's a huge truck.
Oh, okay.
And he said it has a glass, so you can actually see your stuff being shred. Just take a look at the website. It tells you what you can and what you cannot bring to be shredded.
Okay.
And we look forward to it.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. That's right. It's this Saturday here at the Village Hall, 10:30 to 2:30. Any other unfinished business or new business from the council? All right. I hope to see all of you at the best practices next week, so I won't be seeing you before that. With that said, I'd like to open it up to good and welfare. This is where you can come up and not speak from the chair, but speak from the podium, Dr. Ward.
415 Northwest 88th Terrace, Dr. Ward. This has been a very informative meeting, extremely informative. It's good. I mean, I know what time it is, but it's been very good. But I like what you did, Mayor, when you said don't bring this to us without us getting through it. That one of those zoning things. Don't bring this to us. That's easy to hear. I always like when this guy shows up. He and I have a similar background. He seems to do his homework, and I like that. And nobody got long-winded about the subject matter. So we had a very informative meeting tonight, and I'm glad that Vice Mayor Nickerson didn't say quick question, because there's never a quick question when you ask a question. So you're getting better, and people told me, you know, I got feedback, not bad feedback. I got good feedback. So you got to tell the council that people's times are precious. We're tired, like you are, working all day. And Urban, you are becoming such a bombshell, a good one. Every time I turn around, they're talking about what you are doing. And that's pretty good for a junior council person. And the old man over there, he still knows how to get those pointed questions out to the planner. He's been doing this a long time, yeah.
Juan hates when I call him.
I would recommend, however, that periodically you allow the chief to speak. I know he's an administrator, I know. But because you've made a good name for yourself, at least on the west side. I mean, we don't like to divide up but we love you. This man is showing up he's showing up. And not just showing up, but allowing the officers to do their job. He's not acting like a bully. He's showing up, and then he disappears. But to see the chief, come on, man, you got a life too. But this is good. This is good. He's really doing good things. Bulk pickup was good. Bulk pickup was very good. I'm looking forward to the calendar coming out about all of that. That comes very regularly. If it's in the Peacock, I haven't seen the Peacock Express. Must have missed me, so I was looking for it to be here, laying out since it's already out. But you're kind. You're too kind. So thank you all so much for a very, very informative meeting, and let's see if we can't do this again. Thank you.
We'll be here next month.
Dr. Ward, I couldn't agree with you more. I sent an email to the manager and to the chief today because Public Safety Committee meeting was canceled, and I wanted to be rescheduled. So we're going to reschedule that Public Safety Committee meeting because it's too important, and so we're going back and forth on dates because that was canceled because of Hurricane Dorian. Anybody else in Good and Welfare? No. Okay, with that said, anybody up in the council? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Councilperson Mathis. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilperson Roman. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, our September council meeting concludes at 9:03 p.m. Good job.